Thank you. Super excited to be here as the first talk after Julia. I'm really glad you're all here. And I will start my talk with a question. And what comes to your mind when you think of incidents? I ask these questions monthly in my company when we do trainings, and people answer with a lot of different emotions and sentences. So I wanted to ask you and see if you can resonate with some of the things that I'm about to show now. So please show your hands if you think of incidents chaotic. How many of you find incident hectic, quite chaotic? Stressful? Confusing? Stimulating? Yes. Intriguing? It's a really good crowd. And also a place where you feel a sense of togetherness. And I find this especially interesting because recently my company had a really big outage. It was one of its kind, and it had 2 days, a lot of engineers working on recovery. And after some days, we had this sharing on Slack that said, the best team building experience ever. And that got me thinking, what makes a difference? How is it possible that we see these events super stressful, chaotic, and hectic, but some other times we can actually feel this sense of togetherness and stimulation? And if it's possible to have this stimulation and excitement, can we have more of that and less of the chaos? And that's what I would like to talk to you about today. I am Busra. I am an SRE at Datadog in a team called Resilience. My team tries to make the incidents or learning from incidents possible in my organization. We create processes and help people follow them as easy as possible and extract patterns from incidents. So eventually we make Datadog more resilient to adverse events organizationally, but also technically. And apart from work, I like advocating for mental health and also adopting cats. I love that Julie already mentioned cats, and we have some cat pictures here, so if you're going on the team. And I was looking for this is fine dog. I was looking for this is fine dog with the flames, but I thought this actually pictures me a lot better. So this is fine, totally fine. Every house should have actually more of these. Better than flames, not chaotic at all. What was chaotic though for me, and I will start with this, is the first time I broke production. I think perhaps everyone has a story about the time they broke production, so I would love to propose an open spaces for this, so we come together and share our stories. But I'm going to share with you mine now. It was about the time when I started my career, maybe 2 years into it. I was working in a really great company. I loved working there. I was in a team called Software Operations. It was a time where companies were trying to have these DevOps movements. They had the really ops team and dev team, so they were trying to create this middle ground and give people platform. And we were managing a Mesos Marathon clusters back then. This is before Kubernetes, so when I say Mesos Marathon, think about Kubernetes. And that was the time, that was the platform that we were managing. And we were using Ansible and Puppet to manage our services, and one of those days I had to SSH to them and actually apply some of the changes that I was working on. And you know how this goes, right? Like you apply or you plan something and it gives you kind of a diff. There are things that you want to publish or deploy, and there are things that you don't know much idea about, but you might know that it's safe. It's probably safe. But I didn't know what there was. I thought my changes are there, and I saw my teammate doing exactly the same thing the other day, and he checked my changes are there, so he deployed. I pressed enter. Couple of minutes after, the people started coming into our team space, and someone said the Marathon UI looked entirely different. And some other person screamed, my workloads are not getting scheduled. What the heck is going on? And that was the moment that I realized I did something really wrong. And we noticed that I actually accidentally upgraded the whole Mesos cluster. And it changed a lot of things because we were running on a different version now. And at that moment, I had this sinking feeling in my stomach. You know, I started sweating because I had no idea how would I actually manage this. And I feared, going from the fear. I feared because I had no idea how that was happening. But it was a result of something I did. So I had a lot of emotions around, like, what did I do? I feel very guilty. I had no idea whether I will be blamed. I mean, I was blaming myself enough, but it would be really worse if other people thought that I did something really bad. And I also had no idea whether I could tell my side of the story, because when these kind of things happen to us, even though we feel an immense guilt, we also think like, oh, can I actually tell them what happened? And maybe we can talk about it? I didn't know, so I had a lot of fear. And I didn't know how to fix it, right? I had to rely on my teammates to come together and actually do the changes, and I just watched them quietly to fix the thing, and it took around 1 to 2 hours. And as things started to recover, I also started to feel calmer. Because I realized I wasn't alone in this. A lot of people jumped in to fix the things that I broke. They were as surprised as I was, which was also interesting to me. They were like, what? How did this actually happen? And also, to my shocking surprise, that they were also happy that we found a gap to actually fix it later. So they were actually quite also embarrassed that a newcomer could do such a thing and feel quite fearful. So later in the day, my team lead made sure that I actually wrote this story so that we could know how to address it. And this response really sparked something within me then. Because as in my head, I was thinking I could be blamed for this, but it showed me that it was actually really good that we found something in our systems or the way we do things, and we could do them differently. So they told me that the surprises were part of the job, and we learn from our systems by these surprises. And we run complex systems, and we are included in the systems too. So if, however we interact with the machines, we're part of the system design, and we should know better and actually design our systems better, because we are all responsible for making these changes better and safer for each other. So I learned a lot from these events. But I don't think the point is if we are learning, but what we are learning. Because we are always learning from these events because they're impactful, right? They did something and you experienced it. But it got me thinking, what would have happened if my teammates actually acted a lot differently? If they got really annoyed that they now have to fix something for 2 hours because I did something wrong. Or my team lead would have come and told me that, please, Dexter, be careful, you're pretty new. Or they would have said, you costed a lot of people's time and maybe companies' resources. I think in those scenarios, I would have learned fear and never be able to look at these events as something that we could learn from. And if these events ever occur, I would thought that it would be definitely due to the human error, and humans should know better. And as a result, I think I would have stuck at that and how I look at these failures, and because learning from difficult experiences actually stick with us for a really long time. And I think most of us stuck in this fear response, including our organizations. Throughout the history, incidents have been obviously really bad things because they do cause impact, right? And it's completely understandable that we try to prevent them and also try to work out how we can respond to them. And there's nothing really wrong with that. However, I think what is problematic is how we look at them. So if we believe that they are the things to avoid or to be repeated, how on earth can we actually feel calm and good and have this sense of stimulation, excitement to look at them and learn from them? And let's face the reality, we are in a tech industry, right? So we deal with complex systems, constantly shipping and developing like every day with maybe a lot of people. And we don't design perfect software, and yet we don't even run them in a vacuum. We run them in places that we don't even have any control over and have a lot of unknowns. So some of these unknowns are going to create impactful events. And they actually do quite often. So how are we going to deal with them is going to make a lot of difference into how we learn from them. And this is really hard work, but it doesn't have to be this hard. So we need to find a way to kind of unlearn this fear that we are stuck at. And how do we do that? How do we shift our perception from fear to actually amazement that you were all resonating with? How can we cultivate this culture that we actually embrace the learning? We are in DevOps days. I think we know by now that the DevOps cultures were not created by tools. Yes, it really helped. Tools are part of the shift. But actually, we, the humans, are the ones that actually make this culture possible, right? So we don't need more tools. We need a sense of comfort. So we do need to have and create an environment all together where we all feel really comfortable with disruptions. So how do we get there? And that's what I would like to talk to you about on the rest of my talk. I think there are countless ways to approach and create a sense of comfort and safety around incident that would help us to feel less of the chaos and more of the stimulation and excitement and togetherness. And I'm not going to share with you a lot of distinct processes. Instead, I would like to share with you small things that could help you shift the culture a little bit towards a sense of safety. I think we can do a lot, and I would like to categorize them in 3 different sections. I think there are things we can do when things are chill. So when there's no fire, and we have space to learn and have fun. There are things we can do during the response, because it can be quite disrupting, and we don't know how to do that, so we can learn a little bit about on that part. And also we can do things after the dust settles. Let's start with when things are chill. Part of the disruptions are unpleasant because there's a lot of unknowns, and we are not good with unknowns, right? We panic when we have a lot of unknowns. So what can we do to have this calm, sense of space to actually feel that unknowns are okay? Or actually, how can we make some of those unknowns known? And this is the time we could do that. In other words, how can we do some prep work that actually feels like we got this? Questions like, how does the organization think about incidents? What exactly qualifies as an incident? Do we have a tool that we declare them? Do we know when it is good to declare them? Things like this, we could absolutely prepare a little bit before the fire actually starts. And of course, documentation is great for this. You can write pages of documentation how we look at incidents, how incidents are done in our organization. But I think we need more than documentation. Because imagine a new board game, right? It is really nice that you open the manual and you read what you are supposed to do. But what you really, really are eager to do is actually sit down and do one demo round. Then you know what is expected of you and how you can actually play the game. And I think learning with the incidents in the prep time is actually very much the same. So how can we practice handling incidents before they actually happen in real life? I have some ideas of play. So we first need to make sure that the most important bits are known to us so that we know how to practice. Things like, as I said, how do we think of them? How do we follow the processes? What do we do in terms of customer communications? What tools do we use to actually know that we are making progress? Things like this, if you know them beforehand, before you use, this actually makes incidents a bit more less intimidating, and also more manageable. And the next is also creating a safe place where you can actually play with these tools. So if you have a tool that you create incidents with, can I declare a test incident? Can I page another team and actually see if it happens? And this actually helped a lot for you to feel like you can trust the tools and the process when things are a little bit more exciting. And about fun practices, I think this is also really important. After you maybe play with the important bits and play with the tools, now you actually need to experience it. You need to play the game. And in this, for example, at work, we have a very fun scenarios for people to play with. We have a scenario called capturing the stray Pokemon. And we bring a couple of people together, we give them handouts. Some of them are Pokemon experts, some of them are boss, one of them is the person who can do the communication. And then we tell them, there's a stray Pokemon on the village. Villages is 500 people. How do we manage this? and they all have to play this game to figure out how to play this, chaotic situations and learn how to coordinate. And this really helps because it gives people a really fun place, because if they fail at doing some things in the right order, there's no harm, and they feel like they're playing. It also helps them that they don't need to know a certain technical part of the systems, because incident response is really a lot about coordination, and it makes them really practice that in a fun way. And after this, of course, encouraging people to test their service-specific things are really important. So for them to figure out how they scale faster, or restarting a service helps or not, they can already test their services before the incident actually happened, so that they know a little bit how their services recover in real time. And after all this, while you cannot predict the exact outcome of these events, you have a compass. And that compass is a shared understanding of the incidents. You already know a little bit how your organization does incidents, how they look at them. So you kind of feel this sense of control that you got this. You don't know how it's going to happen when actually, the fire starts, but you know a lot of things, and you also know your services. So that's pretty cool. And people ignore this because they usually think that you can learn on the job. Sure, there's a lot of things we can learn on the job. We can do a lot more before to kind of feel that a little bit more confident around these events. And I think this is really important. Now that with that compass, you're actually going to respond to an incident. The things are going to be maybe really bad. So your pager, you carry a pager, maybe you're on call, your pager goes off, alerting to a potential incident. You came in, there's a lot to think about. It looks really, really big, and you need people. I think the very first thing to focus about that really helps is our job is to put out the fire, the quickest way we know. And the secret of creating this sense of control is really on these first minutes, focusing on what we know. Because you know a lot of things. You know how your company does this. You know what's expected of you. Maybe you don't know what is going on with your service, but you know your service well. So there are a lot of things that you know. And focusing on this really helps you figure out what you don't know, so you can actually call for help. And when you call for help, it's really important because no incident has one person in it, right? We are all coming together to do this together. So it's important that you focus on what we know, and then we can call for help. But focusing on what we know is also very crucial and critical, not just for getting help, but also feel a sense of confidence. Recently, I saw this thread on Twitter, and that made me really think about the incident response. And it goes like this. Anjali, who wrote this thread, tweeted about her experiences while flying to Houston. And they were quite stuck on the boarding process because it took really long. And actually, they couldn't even board the plane because they saw that there was a lot of bees on the plane's wing. And everyone was super confused about this because how on earth could something like this happen? Was it safe to fly? How were they going to get rid of these bees? It was quite an unwanted disruption. Very interesting one also. So they thought a lot of things. Could they call a beekeeper? Perhaps spraying the water would deter the bees? Or maybe blowing some air would fly them away. They tried. But unfortunately, bees remained unfazed by these attempts. It also turned out that the best pest control or a beekeeper are not really allowed to touch the aircraft because it's a pretty important thing. And I don't know even that they could come to the airplane or airport. So despite their best efforts and ideas, nothing seemed to work. And hours passed. They patiently wait for a resolution, and eventually they decided they need to relocate the passengers to another gate that also required plane to be moved. And the moment they powered the plane's engine, can you guess what happened next? Yeah, they all fly away. And all they have to do is turn on the plane. I mean, obviously, there is a lot on stake here, right? This safety in the aircraft is a lot different than the things that we are doing. But you get the inspiration, right? So incident response is not about finding the perfect solution. It's about putting out the fire and the flames as quickly, efficiently as possible with the resources are at our disposal. And you know how to turn on and off your services, right? You know how to scale. So you can try them first and see if it's actually going to help instead of making your customers wait for 9 hours for a solution. And I think rest of the response is about coordination, because it usually have a lot of people, they don't work together. So they might need a lot more coordination than your day-to-day job. And there are two things that I saw really help people in this response. And one is making sure that the response is being led. And some companies are using as an incident commander or some kind of a creator role where this person can come to the room and help actually with the communication and give people what they need at the right time and facilitate communication. And this is really helpful because you know someone else is making sure that this incident progress, and you maybe as a responder don't have to deal with that. And the rest is all about sharing responsibilities. So imagine that you are a responder and you're working on the mitigation. There is a customer support who actually works on the customer communication. There's an incident commander who makes sure that you get the help you need. And maybe there's even an executive in the call because they help with the business decisions. That's great. You realize that everyone is actually doing what they know best, and you can deal with the situation quite as easy as it can. So suddenly, this event doesn't look like something very unknown to you, right? Doesn't look like something that has to be really chaotic. It can be something that we quickly come together and do what we know best. And it will always a bit messy. Because why? Real-time firefighting is messy. We know some things, but there's a lot of things that we don't know. And we might have challenging days where the external factors actually put some fuel to the fire, like your cloud service is not acting the right way, or some incidents might be really, really long that you might need to come up with some creative situations. And that's why it's really important to feel good about these events, because how can we actually create some different solutions when we need them if we feel a sense of, fear or unease. So that's also why we really need to create this sense of control and safety and, navigate the event the best way we know and accept the messiness. Because afterwards, we're going to have plenty of time to reflect on this event and think about, okay, how can we do less messy next time? How the things are actually unfold. And this takes me to my last category on this, how do we make these incidents better for each other, and that is after the dust settles. Maybe you roll back and it was an easy incident, or maybe it was really long that you had to use a duct tape and you need to make sure that you take it away when time comes. But it's all done now, right? And the most important thing that we should do, is actually have some space to rest and think. There is nothing to do at this moment. We just need to make sure that let the adrenaline go in and everyone thinks better after a good night's sleep. And that was really important because incidents are unplanned investments, and their costs have already been occurred. You already lost sleep. Maybe you already had issues and your company lost some revenue. And that's all okay, because it has been an investment, because your challenge right now as an organization to get the most return of investment these events. So there is a lot we can talk after about the incidents, but I have a really crucial tips that actually helps us to bring the most details around an event. So probably all of you need to write an incident report, right? And I say, ditch the template. I don't say it entirely, but the thing about templates is that they might be really rigid. They might ask you questions that you might need to answer that takes you away from the narrative that you would like to say. So before maybe you go to the template, tell the story like you would tell to your best friend. Why? Because when we are telling to our best friend about what happened or what we actually contribute to, we bring the most juicy details. We rant about the systems. We actually bring out all the frustrations that we had around it. And these are really important around incident reports, because if you were in an incident and you paid someone and it took 15 minutes for that person to come in, you had a lot of frustration, right? Maybe we need to look at that place and see how we can actually make that on-call experience better. Or if you were at the end of your on-call shift 7 days and you were super tired, it affected how you responded to incidents, right? So how can we actually make that easier for you next time so you feel a bit more capacity? So it's really important to bring that frustrations along with your technical response to the incidents, but I think we always forget this human side of the response. Also, when you're telling the friend to you're telling the story to your friend, you don't forget the positives as well, right? You tell them where you were actually really lucky. You told them that you were actually prepared for some things and it really helped. And this is also really important to capture in the incident reports because it helps you track your near misses. And near misses, what I mean by that is that if you actually had a very lucky situation, you paged the team, and the person who came into the incident was the best, like the most knowledgeable person in the topic, and you were like, oh my God, I'm so lucky that that person was on call. I mean, it's great, but should it be like that? Should it be that everyone in that on-call rotation actually would know the best about their systems and we should actually follow that knowledge gap? So you could actually trust next time and you don't have to rely on the luck? So it's really important that when we celebrate our, what went well, we also look for the ways that how can we make this luck more permanent next time. And talking with a person is always useful when we talk about action items, right? You can actually brainstorm about how to fix this, and you don't have to do this alone. And when we share this story with our friend or anyone in our company, so we kind of feel this like we are being listened, but we are also super honest to bring everything that happened. Because stories are a lot more powerful than numbers. So don't take the number of incidents or the response metrics to improve, because absence of incident is not an evidence of learning. I'm going to repeat this. Absence of the incident is not an evidence of learning from them. So what is learning is actually how you look at them and extract everything that you want to do differently and you want to improve your systems and your organizations. And to cultivate this culture, we have a couple of things at work, and one thing that I really, really enjoy is that we have a group of volunteers who come together every week and read the outage reports every week. So we read the impactful incidents. We really set a timer for 10 minutes, sit down and read them. And then we have a discussion about what is going on. And it's really interesting that sometimes some people hesitate to write full story. When you're reading the story, you're like, oh, this doesn't actually go as well. It looks like we are missing some details. And those are the people usually are involved with triggering the incidents, because they do blame themselves very naturally, and when they write the report, they want to say that, yeah, it was all me, I'm going to do better next time. But reading this story helps us actually figure out these gaps and then go to that person and talk, tell me what really happened. Tell me what was going on that we could actually do better next time. So it's really crucial that when we write these stories and read them, we try to see what kind of environment that we actually create. And these reports are written once, but read many, many, many times. So it really helps when we actually help people to write these stories. It helps them to bring the most important details so that we could share with everyone in our organizations. And stories make people remember, not your numbers. It's not going to remember. People are not going to remember how many incidents they had last week, but they're going to remember the incident that looked really interesting and they fixed something around it. And every company is going to do this a bit differently. The story I shared with you in the beginning of my talk, we didn't have any of these processes. I don't think we even called it an incident. But I did have the right culture around looking at that and learn from the failures. So don't fixate on creating those processes around your companies. You mean well, but look at the small ways that you can feel better about these events, that people feel a bit of more supported. So look for these small ways that maybe I shared with you to see what resonates and see what part of the process that you can include them to your incident response. And if you're wondering if you're around the right path, think about these questions. Does everybody contribute easily? Your customer comms, your responders, your incident commanders, or everyone in the organization, can they come all hands on deck and do the things they know the best? Do people generally feel good about these events? This is not so hard to know. It's really not, and we don't need numbers for this. We can just talk to each other and see How is your on-call shift right now? How are you doing with the incidents? And does your understanding of the system increase over time? Because that's what incidents show us. It shows us all the assumptions that we had that work differently. So we're like, oh, I thought my systems were quite resilient to this, but I don't think it is. So now we make that more resilient. So actually, our understanding of our system should really increase over time. And also, most importantly, are we able to choose what we work on based on these events? Because actually, they show us the impact, and they help us to be the authority to choose what to work on and make our systems more resilient. So we should be able to put what we learn on the incidents back into our planning cycles so that we could actually know we are taking the actions that we want to do. And your sign is this. If you're doing any of this, if you're feeling a little bit of a psychological safety around surprises, you already know. You're going to feel less of the chaos, confusion, and stress, but more of the stimulation and collective support and that togetherness, which I saw a lot of you actually resonated today. So we work with the complex systems. When your beautiful code meets the real world, it always ends up somewhere interesting. So embrace the discovery. Thank you.